You're listening to the Music Tech Teacher Podcast, episode number 9. Welcome to the Music Tech Teacher Podcast. Music tech tips, lesson ideas, advice, news, and interviews, especially for music teachers. Brought to you by midnightmusic.com.au. Hi, I'm Katie Wardrobe, and welcome to another episode of the Music Tech Teacher Podcast. I'm recording from home today as usual. It's actually 9:30 at night and my kids have just gone to sleep, so it's a good opportunity to do some recording. I've just shut myself in the office and it's kind of really warm here today. We're still in the end part of summer. I'm recording in mid-March and it's really, really warm, so I've had to turn the air conditioner off while I'm recording to reduce down the background noise. I'm hoping to get this done without too many mistakes so I can go and turn it back on again quickly. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about doing recordings with students at school. I'm going to cover some tips for when students are doing their own recordings for creative projects, and also a few tips for recording ensemble rehearsals or class groups. So we'll talk today about why record in the first place, what sort of projects you can record, what sort of things you can record, and how to actually do recording. So we'll talk a little bit about the tech side of things. Now, recording students has lots and lots of benefits, and I think there are many reasons to use it when you're teaching music. Some of the things that you can do are to capture creativity. You might want to capture evidence of learning for assessment purposes. You can provide instant feedback. So if you're doing rehearsals or performances or students are doing practice sessions, recording can be a great way to provide instant feedback on what's happening. You might also like to use recording for archival purposes. And one other thing is that students, if they're doing the recordings themselves, they can learn really valuable recording and editing skills, which can be used in lots of different ways in later life. So here are some of the examples of the types of things that you might do with students that can be recorded. Students might like to record their own creative projects. That could be compositions or cover versions of songs that they're performing, storytelling projects, maybe non-fiction audio reports of some sort, film scoring and video game scoring. All of those creative projects are fantastic for recording. Recording for assessment purposes might include recording students who are performing, who are singing, maybe even just doing simple rhythmic exercises and you need to have a look at how they're doing those, or playing, delivering a verbal report of some sort, or demonstrating some kind of knowledge. So here in Australia, we have a sort of a practical music subject which teaches vocational skills. And one of the things that they need to do as part of that is to demonstrate how to put together a PA system. So recording a student doing that, just verbally talking through how to set up a PA, that's a great way to use recording for assessment purposes. Recording to get objective feedback during rehearsals or practice sessions is also fantastic. In my experience, anyone that you're rehearsing with, students and even teachers or other adults, it can be hard to know what the group sounds like as a whole, or even what you yourself as a soloist sound like, until you hear it back on a recording. Now, this is a little bit daunting for some people, but I find that the effect that it has is really good. So an ensemble might be perhaps singing, if maybe you've got a choir, you might be singing in rehearsal and everyone thinks it kind of sounds okay. And then when you play back the recording, a lot of things become apparent, the imbalance perhaps between parts, or someone singing, a bit flat or a bit sharp. Having a recording and hearing it back can open people's eyes to that. When you're in the process of singing or performing, sometimes you don't notice those things yourself. Recording performances for archival purposes as well is a great thing to do. So you might have a fantastic ensemble and you might want to capture their performance of a specific piece. So doing that and then being able to keep that as a record of what happened that year is a great way to use recording as well. Now, in terms of gear, what do you need to actually do recording? I find that choosing gear or finding the money for equipment can often be a barrier for teachers, to tackle doing recording in the first place with students. A lot of teachers decide that it's perhaps easier just not to do recordings at all because they don't have the right equipment. But really, I wouldn't let it hold you back. There's still a lot of things that you can do, even with a very, very tight budget. And a lot of the time you can use things that you already have at school or even at home. So you need basically two things. You need something to record onto, so that's going to store the audio file. And we'll talk about microphones as well, so the thing that you're going to actually use to record. In terms of the actual device that's going to store the recording, lots of options. A laptop is great, a desktop computer is great. Don't forget that you can just use a simple smartphone or iPad or other tablet. Or you might have a handheld recording device of some sort. There's the Zoom handheld recording device. I know a number of teachers have one of those, and they're great to use too. For microphones, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'll just sort of talk through an overview of the types of microphones that you could use. Now, option one, I'm going to mention super low budget and perhaps not the best quality as well, but better than nothing in some cases. And that is to use the inbuilt microphone in the thing that you're recording onto. So if you're using a laptop, most laptops have a microphone. And look, you could use that for some recordings that you're going to do. It's not going to be the best quality. You know, if you're thinking about recording a performance of an ensemble, I wouldn't go there. But if you're wanting students to do storytelling projects in class time, that might be a fine option for that sort of project. It's great for things where you want to capture something quickly. And the drawback about using inbuilt microphones is not that they're really bad microphones, but they actually pick up a lot of the background noise. So they're a little bit too sensitive. They pick up everything from students talking next to you in the classroom to the drum teacher that's practicing next door to just sort of background noise in the school generally. They might pick up things outside. I have this issue at home. If I just do a quick, recording with my inbuilt laptop microphone, I can hear the cars driving past or the ambulance that might start up down the road or something like that. So they don't give you the best result because they're picking up so much stuff. Now, one small step better, if you're doing, this sort of quick capture or, casual, I suppose, classroom projects with students, one thing you can maybe consider is gaming headphones or, iPhone headphones that have the little microphone dangling down. Now, again, they're not the best option for many recording instances, but they might be better than nothing. So if I take that storytelling example, gaming headphones or iPhone headphones are going to be better than using nothing at all because they're going to isolate the sound that you're trying to record in the first place. So that could be an option. I've done some singing stuff into my iPhone headphones. Again, it's not fabulous, and you need to sort of remember, I tend to move the little dangling microphone bit away from my mouth if I'm singing a high part, which is going to be louder. I move it away. But, it works really well for a quick capture for something that I'm doing. So the instance that I've used that is the Loopy app. There's a live looping app called Loopy, and I use that on my iPhone or my iPad. And if I have nothing else, that's better than nothing. The iPhone headphones are okay. Now, if you want to go a little step further than that and do something with a bit better quality, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can use something like a USB microphone, which you can plug straight into your computer or even into your iPad or tablet. Now, if you are using a USB microphone with your iPad, you do need some kind of adapter to allow you to plug the microphone lead into the iPad itself. And I have one of those. It works really well. There's a little USB adapter that you can buy from the Apple shop, and it allows you to I use it to plug my USB microphone in, and also a MIDI keyboard as well. Same adapter, works really well. There are a big range of options for USB microphones, and they range in price sort of from around, $50 or less, right up to multiple hundreds of dollars. So they can be really quite economical. They're very portable, very convenient, and great for classroom use. Really good for elementary students and older students as well. The one that I have is called a blue snowball microphone, and the great thing about that one is that it has 3 settings on it. So you can use one. One of the settings will just pick up, a single source that you're recording. One of the other settings allows you to pick up sound from all around the microphone. So that would be the one that you would use, to plonk in the middle of an ensemble, and it will pick up the whole group. And then it has a third setting which allows you to record louder ensembles like a rock band. It kind of reduces down the input level when you're recording there. You don't have to get the blue snowball. That's just the one I've had for a few years now. And there are a number of other microphones in that sort of price range. And if you speak to your local music retailer, they can help you out there. There's been a lot more come onto the market in recent years, and they're really popular because they're so easy to use. Now, I find with the USB microphones, they're good because they're literally plug and play. You plug them in to your laptop or iPad and they kind of just work. In the past, before USB microphones came along, I think there was a bit of a barrier to using microphones, with your laptop, for instance, because it involved multiple pieces of equipment, and to get them all to talk to each other seemed like a hard thing. It's really not that bad, but it did seem like a hard thing at the time. So a USB mic, just plug it in and play. It can be good to, if you're sort of doing classroom or general music, it can be really good to have a few USB microphones. You don't really need one for every single student in the class. You don't need a whole set of 25. If you had just 5, of course, when you're doing recording with students, you might be able to rotate groups through and use them at different times. So they might do different activities at different times, so not everybody's needing to use a microphone at once. USB mics are of course good when you just need to plug in really maybe one microphone. If you want to plug in multiple microphones, or you want to use a different type of microphone that has the more standard XLR cable, then there are a couple of other options for plugging those microphones into your laptop or even into your iPad as well. I have my other microphone that I have at home is a Shure SM58. It's a really standard microphone that everybody has, and you've probably got one lying around at your school even if you don't know it. It's one of those stage mics. It's kind of hardy and lasts for years, and there's not much you can do to wreck it. Hopefully, I'm saying that now, hopefully thinking no one's actually going to go and try and wreck their Shure SM58 microphone, but they're really hardy. Lots of rock bands use them and use them for singing, so they're also a great one to use. And because lots of schools have them already, that might be the thing that you want to explore using with laptops or iPads. And again, now you need something to plug into the laptop in order to plug the microphones into. So in most cases, you'll use something like an audio interface or a small mixing desk perhaps. So an audio interface is just a little box which has a couple of places where you can plug microphones in. Usually you're able to plug in a guitar lead as well. So if you wanted to record someone who's singing and a guitarist, you could plug both of those things into your audio interface. That's the thing that plugs into your laptop, and that actually has a USB cable. So it kind of works in the same way. A small mixing desk would be useful. It's, sort of similar, but that would be the thing you would choose if you wanted to plug more things in at once to your laptop. So let's say you've got 4 voices that you want to record simultaneously, or, a couple of voices and a couple of instruments. A small mixing desk, with 4 channels or more will suit that scenario. Now, I mentioned that I plug that microphone, which has an XLR cable, into my iPad. And again, you need, some kind of adapter or something to allow you to do that. I have one which is called an iRig, and it's made by IK Multimedia, which are the same people that make a small adapter for your guitarist to use, and they allow the guitar to be plugged into the iPad. I have a similar thing which allows my microphone to be plugged in. The one I have plugs into the headphone socket, and that works really well. You can also get devices or adapters that plug into the charging cable part of your iPad as well, and they give slightly better sound quality. The one I have works really well. The reason I've gone for the microphone plugging in one is because when I'm presenting, I need to plug in the data projector into that other place, and so therefore I need to have the one that plugs into the headphone socket. That's just for your information if you're thinking about showing students in class how it might work. And I find it works really well. So I can plug in my regular microphone. I can use that for the live looping app that I mentioned before. It gives a much better result than just using my iPhone headphones, and it just picks up my voice. So when I'm doing live looping, for instance, it gives clean loops. So each loop is very much on its own without any sound bleeding into it from the background. So that works really well. Plugging into an audio interface or a mixing desk, this is what you would use if you wanted to go for, a good quality sound recording of an ensemble, for instance, or a live performance of instrumental players or singers. Now, again, there are lots and lots of microphones on the market for the non-USB type choices, the better quality choices. And again, I'd really urge you to go and chat to your music retailer about which one suits your scenario. You can just go and tell them what it is that you want to record and the type of recording that you want to make, whether it's just, classroom projects or whether it's a high quality live instrumental recording at a performance. And they'll be able to help you narrow down the choices and work within your budget. So after the break, I just want to cover a couple of other things to do with recording, including the location, like where you should record or what your choices might be, and a couple of things you really need to make sure that you do, which I find are often forgotten. This episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast is brought to you by the Midnight Music Community. The Midnight Music Community is an online space for music teachers who'd like help using technology in their music lessons. There are online courses, video tutorials, lesson plans, music tech news, and professional development certificates are provided for any training that you undertake. I'm inside the community every day, personally answering members' questions and sharing tips and ideas. The best thing is that you get to connect with hundreds of other music teachers just like you and share your own experiences and occasional music tech frustrations. For more information and a special joining price just for the listeners of this podcast, visit midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. That's midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. Okay, so let's talk location. Where should you record? And I'm just going to talk for a minute about the classroom environment. So this is the instance where you might have students doing creative projects and you want all of the students to do their own recordings for whatever that project is. Now, I actually wrote an article about this quite some time ago, which was called How to Record Kids in a Noisy Classroom, and gave some suggestions in that. So I'll link to that article in the show notes, which you can find at midnightmusic.com.au/9. I'll talk through some of those things now and a few extra things that I didn't mention in that article as well. Now, the first thing to consider and to remember is do your best to make the environment good before you start recording. There's this saying in the recording industry about garbage in, garbage out, and it's so true. So I find a lot of people are under the misconception maybe that, bad stuff can be edited out later on, so can't we just use software to remove that background noise that we don't want in there? And to some extent that can be a sort of true. I mean, you can remove some things, but it's quite hard work, especially if you want a really good quality recording. And in all honesty, if there's background noise that you don't want in your recording, you might be better off just doing it again. And it's really good to try and think of these things ahead of time and make the environment good so that you don't need to do that editing work later on. It's very difficult and very time consuming to get rid of stuff later on. So whatever you can do in the first place is to your benefit. So first of all, you want to listen to the surroundings, and you really need to listen properly. I think we get very used to switching off from certain sounds that are in our environment. So, if I sit here at home very quietly, I might think that there's nothing going on in my house and that it's fairly silent, but then the fridge will stop and have a little rest, as it does every now and again. I think, oh my gosh, it was so noisy. I didn't realize how noisy it was until it stopped. So there is that fridge sound running for most of the time in my house. If you listen in a classroom or in an office that you might be in at school, If you listen carefully enough, you'll probably hear the hum of the lights in the room. You might hear outside noise, traffic in the background. You might hear chairs scraping as they get dragged across the floor as people get up or down. You might find that someone's got a really persistent cough in the room next door, which can be really irritating. All of those things are potentially going to be picked up by your recording. And again, you need to think about what type of recording you're doing as to how much you're going to worry about this stuff. So if this is just kids recording stories in class time and it's not a massive, big end of semester project, that's okay. You might not be fussed about any of that noise. Just go ahead and do it. Not a big deal. But, if it's a final performance for someone, then that's when you really do want to consider those sorts of things. Sorts of things you can do to improve your background noise that might be around is to find a room where there is no background noise or very little. So something that's a bit more dead sounding. And, at home for me here, I take my laptop and microphone into my walk-in closet where all my clothes are, because it's carpeted in there and, there's clothes on either side. It's a very dead space. So it's much better to record in there where I can add in my own reverb if I want to, add in that stuff afterwards. Much easier to add stuff in than to take things out. If I was to record in the bathroom or the kitchen where there's tiles all across the floor, it's not going to give me as good a result really, because it's going to be a very bright sounding recording. The sound reflects off shiny surfaces or hard surfaces. So if you can avoid those, that's a really good thing to look for. If you're in a classroom and you want groups of students or individual students to record their own project, and you've got maybe 24 kids that need to do this, there might be better parts of the room that you can use, and maybe even better spaces in the school that you can use. So if you're able to move outside your single classroom and split students up into separate spaces, that could work really well. I probably wouldn't choose the corridor, which has the shiny floor and the shiny, well, not shiny, but hard, walls. You might want to find, if you can, a carpeted area that's not being used. And I know that's not possible for everyone all the time, but, if you can do that, I think it's a really good thing. So look for soft furnishings, carpeted areas, curtains, inside a closet. If you've got a dressing room nearby because the theatre people are, close to you in location, maybe there's some space in there. I have a friend, Cheryl, who's a music teacher in South Australia here, and she unfortunately had to work in a gymnasium for, run her music classes in a gymnasium for, I think, 12 months. I believe she's just moved out of that gym this year, which is a good thing. But she sent me a photo of her students recording, and they had surrounded themselves with crash mats that were in the gym. So she created her own sort of soft furnishing area that could allow the students to record their projects. One thing you can do with that classroom situation, if you've got lots of students in one confined space and you do want them to do some recording, one really good thing to do is to try and make your own homemade vocal booths. Now, this sounds, like a lot of trouble, but really you can do this very simply by grabbing a cardboard box of some sort, and if you can, some kind of padding, so cushions or pillows or material, offcuts of material, and lining the cardboard box with that soft furnishing stuff. What you can do is turn the box on its side, so the opening is actually lying on its side on the desk, and place the microphone just inside the box. The students are going to then talk towards the opening of the box, which is where the microphone's placed. Hopefully you can visualize that, because I'm just describing it verbally, of course. I did describe this in a workshop once, and one of the teachers thought that I meant that the box was sitting up on the desk and the microphone was being placed down inside the box, but no, I'm actually thinking on its side. You're sort of creating like a cave, I suppose. You could think of it that way. Now, you can actually buy not too expensive vocal booths, which are, sort of professional type ones, which have a, like a kind of like a firm material outside, and then proper foam on, the lining of the surface of the box that you're using, and they work really well. But if you can't afford that, look, a homemade job would be great. There's actually some videos on YouTube of people who have made their own homemade ones. And I do know of a teacher, I can't find the link, it was so long ago, but I do know of a teacher in the States who had a delivery of new Mac, iMacs, I think, for her classroom. And she kept all of the boxes that the Macs came in, and they're sort of that clamshell type box which opened up, with a hinge. And what she did was turn them all onto their side so that when they were opened out, they were in a V shape on the desk. And she did keep the foam that was packed, the Macs were packed in, and lined the boxes with that foam. And even, I think, put something across the top of the V-shaped cardboard, which created this great little vocal booth for her students to do podcasting in and storytelling and those types of activities. Now, if you are still having trouble, with multiple students in one class who all need to record their projects, one simple thing that you can do is to take turns. So you might record on rotation. Perhaps there's some quiet activity that you can assign, most of the class, and one group or one student might come up to the front while everyone else is quiet or relatively quiet and record their project. So they get their own little time to do that. There might be other activities, maybe listening activities that some of the groups in the classroom can do while other students are doing their recording. Even having 1 or 2 groups doing recording instead of 4 or 5 is going to help. So finding something that most of the students could do while people are doing recordings would help, I think. So if you're recording an ensemble, you will need to think about mic placement, and having microphones on stands, of course, is going to help so that you can place them correctly for the group. And having microphones suspended above the group or centralised in some way is also going to help. There's nothing worse than when you capture a recording, and again, I'll use, say, a choir as an example. If you capture a recording of a choir singing and you have the mic placed next to that really loud bass singer, and when you listen back to the recording, all you've got is their voice quite, prominent in the recording. So you want to make sure that you do a little test first of all. I would get everybody to sing or play a loud section and a soft section of the piece and do a little test, stop that and have a listen back, and then make adjustments if you need to. Now, one thing I'm going to mention, because when I say this in workshops, most people don't realise they need to do this or get the students to do this. And this is the situation where you are doing recording, or students are doing recording over a backing track of some sort. So if a student has perhaps created a backing track for a song they've composed, and then they're going to go ahead and sing over the top of it, they're going to record their vocal part. There's one thing that you need to make sure that they do before they hit the record button, and that is to put headphones on. Most people instantly jump to the conclusion that putting the headphones on, of course, is going to allow them to hear the backing track. And that is true, absolutely true. It does allow them to hear the backing track, and nice and clearly. But one of the other things that plugging headphones in does, and I'm talking particularly about, the situation where you're using your iPad or laptop or other tablet to record onto. The thing that plugging headphones in is that it stops the sound coming from the speakers of that device. So it stops the external sound coming out of the device while the student is recording their voice in. And the reason you want to do that is it's really important to try and get a clean recording of the vocal part. So if you weren't to not plug headphones in, when you hit record, you're going to get the recording of the voice, but also the backing track as well in the voice part, and it's going to get re-recorded, if you know what I mean. So you'll end up with sort of 2 lots of the backing. Now, this is not very helpful. If you end up with that, it makes it very difficult to edit things out later on. It's hard to do things like add reverb, because you're not adding reverb just to the voice. It's going to be to everything, to the recording of the backing and the voice as well. So all they need to do is plug headphones in. It stops that sound coming out of the speakers, and it will also allow the singer or player to hear the backing track that they need to go with. Now, I'm going to finish off with a few tips, things you can do if students are shy about recording. And I'm guessing probably that this might be true for many teachers as well. Believe me, when I started doing things like tutorial videos and recording my voice, voiceovers for those, and all sorts of other things. Or if someone records a presentation that I've given, believe me, it took me a long time to get over the sound of my own voice. I know it sounds really weird when you first hear your own voice back. I'm totally desensitized to it now, so I think just doing it a lot will help. And that's not always going to be a helpful suggestion for students, though. They may not get the chance to do a lot of recording. There's a few things that you can do to assure them and make them feel better about doing their recording if they are a little bit shy. One thing is that you can let them know that they're able to edit their work. So it doesn't matter if they make mistakes, they can edit the work later on, or even better, just record another take. If it's something quite short, just simply recording another take is much better in the long run than trying to edit the first one that they didn't like. A suggestion that I'll make as well is that you don't delete the first take. If it's pretty much there, don't delete it. They can just mute that track, add a new track, and record the vocals again, or the instrumental part, or whatever it is they're doing over the top, or the story if it's a storytelling project. So instead of deleting that first take, just leave it there and mute it, and then record a second version. And you could do a third version as well, and a fourth version. I find a lot of the time that the first version really wasn't that bad, and often that ends up being the one that you'll keep. I find that I don't even delete the takes that I'm not going to use. I actually still leave them there even when I've completed the project. I'm not really sure why, but I feel like I just want to hang on to it for some reason. But anything that's muted in your project will not export. So when you go to export it later on, if you export the backing track and the good version of the solo line that they've created, then anything you have muted won't come out in the exported final version. So you can leave anything in there and just mute it if you don't want it in there. And then it's there if you want to go back and use it. I often, maybe have 2 or 3 takes of something that I've done, and I might even do that thing where I combine part of one take with another. So maybe I said it better in this version of the take, or I sang it better in this version of the take, and then the second half was better in the second take. So you can edit in your recording software, just delete the first part or move pieces around, just like it's a jigsaw puzzle. Really, it's not very hard to do at all, and you can go ahead and do that. So students can be assured that they're able to edit or record another take if they're a little bit worried about doing recording in the first place. If you're doing storytelling projects or non-fiction narration type things, maybe podcasts, you can do podcasts with students where they are perhaps presenting a history project in a spoken format instead of writing. I would suggest also keep going even when you make a mistake. So right now, while I'm recording this podcast, I've made a number of mistakes, which you're probably not going to hear in the final version because I will edit them out. So if I make a mistake, I leave it recording. I just leave the recording going, knowing that I can go back, I'll listen to it again, and I'll get rid of any parts where I've, had to speak the same thing twice because I messed it up the first time. As I mentioned before, if you can do this often enough that you desensitize yourself to the sound of your own voice, that can be a really good thing. The other thing that you can do, if students don't like hearing their own voice, or they're not confident singers and you want them to sing something or rap or something like that, one thing that you can do, if it suits the project you're doing, is to get them to add effects to their voice after they've done their recording. In some programs, you can actually add the effect as you're recording. I don't think that's always a good idea. I think it's better to hear yourself in a clean way, so hear what your actual voice sounds like in the first place. But afterwards, you can add an effect. So, the sort of thing where it sounds like the person's maybe singing down a telephone line, it's got that kind of different kind of effect sound to it. You can add reverb. If you're doing storytelling projects, you can actually change the sound of your voice to be very high or very low. So me as a female, I can adjust the pitch of my recorded voice down a couple of octaves and sound like a male. So that can be great for storytelling if you've got different characters in the story and you want to change, the sound of the voice there. But as I said, it can be also useful just to disguise your voice a little bit You want to make it in a tasteful way. If it's a musical thing like a song, do it in a tasteful way and not use it too much, but it can be a great way to get over that. Auto-tune is another thing that, again, you need to decide whether it suits the project or not. But a little bit of auto-tune, I don't think goes astray really. Of course, it can be very much overused, but, it can help make things sound a little bit more palatable, I suppose, for some students. And again, I think it's really important to be very tasteful about it and not overuse it. Unless you take it to the extreme and it becomes an effect in itself, it becomes a metallic sound that you want for that particular project. That's also another option too. So I hope that's helpful. A few tips for recording students in class. And if you yourself haven't done much recording as a teacher, look, it's lots of fun. It really is. And you need to just kind of get into it and try it. I use recording all the time, and it's something that I need to remember to use. Well, when I first started out, I needed to remind myself to use it. So things like, even going along to conferences where someone sings a great little choral warm-up or something like that, my natural reaction is to get out a piece of paper and notate it as I'm sitting there. But then, of course, in recent years, it's occurred to me that I can just get out my phone and record it if the presenter's happy for that to happen. And that is a lot quicker than trying to notate it on the spot. Just using the recording device as a tool like that is a great productivity thing to do. It can make life a lot easier. So go ahead and give recording a go if you don't already do much of it in your class. Test it out, with yourself or with students, and I'd love to hear how you go. If you do try something, let me know. You can follow me on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Midnight Music. Leave a comment there, that would be great. Or you can connect with me on Twitter @KatieSW1, that's S for Sam. And I look forward to seeing you next week. The Music Tech Teacher podcast is hosted by me, Katie Wardrobe. You can find more information and links from today's episode at midnightmusic.com.au/9. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.